Hello and welcome back to the College Football Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel, and as always, we're going to be talking about Week 8 preview in this episode, and we are going to also be talking about some news from around the league. So let's get into the intro, and then we can catch up about it all after the intro plays. And that is the intro for our Week 8 preview and news, obviously. So let's hop into some preview for the games. We're gonna start with what game should we start with? Let's start with USC and Utah. So USC and Utah are playing this weekend on Saturday. They're going to be playing. I believe it's at Utah, but I could be wrong about that. Let me. I believe it's at Utah, but they're also. It's at USC. My bad. They're going to be playing at USC, and the biggest question that I have is going to be: is Cam Rising going to be playing in this game? And I don't know if he is. I don't know if he isn't. I haven't seen anything either way. I'm guessing it's going to come down to a game time decision for Cam Rising because he's been able to practice unlimited for I think it's a couple of weeks now. It's like 10 days or something like that. So whether he plays, I don't know, but this is one of the most important games on Utah's schedule because this is a game that is going to dictate if USC maybe makes it into the conference championship, and if they become a conference champion with a 1-loss record, do they make it into the college football playoffs, say over like FSU? Or do they make it over maybe a 1-loss Big Ten team? Who knows? I think it's unlikely that they make it in over a 1-loss Big Ten team, but it's still gonna be an interesting thing. So what do they do? Do they make it over maybe a Big 12 champion with 1 loss? Or if there is a Big 12 champion that has 1 loss, do they make it over? Because I think Oklahoma is currently doesn't have a loss still. So, but that is going to be the biggest question of the day. The over/under is 52, and the line is at USC -7. If Cam Rising plays, I actually like to favor Utah in this game over USC. If he does not play, I would favor USC in this game because I think Cam Rising completely turns this team around. He has not played yet this season. He did dress, I believe, for the Florida game, but he didn't play at all. So it's gonna be an interesting game. Let's go over some Utah stats. So Utah has 308.8 yards per game. That's 116th in the FBS. They have 172 rushing yards, 172.7 rushing yards. That's 48th in the FBS. The yards per game was 115th, and that's last in the Pac-12. And then the rushing yards is 48th, and that's 5th. The passing yards is 136.2. That's 124th in FBS and 12th in the Pac. And then 21.7 points per game. That's 111th and 11th in the Pac-12. Now, if you compare this to last year, they're doing significantly worse. And it's completely because of Cam Rising. He is I would classify him as a great college football quarterback. He's been in the league for a few years, so he knows how things work. He knows how to read defenses. He knows how to read all of these things much better than their backup does. And he's had a lot of success at Utah in his career. So it's not surprising that their offense is, I will say it's floundering without him. So it's not surprising that that's happening, in my opinion. But what is the staple of a great Utah football program? It's their defense. And once again, they have great defense. They have 249 yards let per game. That's 6th in FBS and 1st in Pac-12. 66.8 rushing yards per game. That's 2nd in FBS and 1st in Pac-12. 182.2 yards. That's 29 for passing. That's 29th in the FBS and second in the Pac-12, and 12.2 yards or 12.2 points per game against them. That's fifth in the FBS and first in the Pac-12. And given that the Big Ten has, I think, the top three points per game defenses in the country, that's a good stat. And that's going to shift a lot because those top three teams are all playing each other. So Penn State and Ohio State are playing this weekend, which we'll get into. Michigan and Ohio State are playing in a few weekends. Michigan and Penn State are playing in a few weekends. Then 2 weeks after that, Michigan and Ohio State meet up again at the Big House. So that number is going to change. So it's all gonna depend on, who has better offense, who can get the ball moving, things like that, who has their identity more than anybody else. But we'll get into that Penn State USC game or Penn State Ohio State game because that's gonna be a big game this weekend. Now let's compare that to what is USC. So USC, their offense for total yards, they have 474. That's 13th in FBS and third in Pac. For rushing yards per game, that they have 158.9, 61st in FBS, 7th in Pac. Passing yards per game is 315th. That 315.1. That's 9th in FBS and 4th in Pac. And points per game is 47.3. That's second in the FBS and second in the Pac. Now on defense, their numbers start to show a little more. They start to they tend to fall in the mid to bottom range of the Pac, and they also tend to fall into the mid and bottom range of college football as well. So let's get into those. Yards per game is 374.3 allowed. That's 82nd in FBS and 7th in the Pac. 152.4 rushing yards per game allowed. That's 84th in the FBS and 11th in the Pac. Passing yards is 221.9, which is 84th in the FBS and 7th in the Pac. And then their scoring defense is 30 points per game, which they let up, and that's 98th in the FBS, 9th in Pac. So if Cam Rising does come into this game, it's going to be a toss-up for this game. And I really think Utah could pull it out. And even without Cam Rising, I do think Utah could give USC a very hard time, especially if they do what they did to Caleb Williams, what Notre Dame did to Caleb Williams last weekend, which was you put a lot of pressure on him, you force him to stay in the pocket, you blitz a lot, and he makes mistakes. So we'll see if he can kind of swallow that pressure and play through it, or is he going to crumble under this? Not only that, but we're also going to see what his reaction to last week's game was, because that's a big game to lose. USC Notre Dame was a big game, arguably the biggest game on both of their calendars. So it's a big question mark as to how does he bounce back, because that was by far his worst performance in college football thus far. So it's gonna be a big difference maker. And if he has more games where he's not performing to the level that we saw from him last year or even earlier this year, he's going to have some hard questions, and he might start following those draft rankings, because teams are going to look at him and go, if you can't handle the big games, how are you going to then come to the pro game in front of, a lot of people all over the world? And don't get me wrong, college football has a lot of people all over the world watching him right now, but it is a bigger stage. It is a stage that has more meaning attached to it at the pro game than it does at the college. Now, as college football fans, we don't think that, because we love college football. I love college football far more than I like the NFL. To be honest, I don't like the NFL all that much. I don't think the game is as fun or as interesting. So, it is a big stage, but I still think, he'll start falling if he doesn't start performing to where we think he can perform and where he has performed in the past. So we'll see what goes on there. The next game I'm going to talk about is actually going to be Iowa versus Minnesota. Iowa is currently ranked 24th in in some world, Iowa is currently ranked 24th, and I don't get it. I don't understand how Iowa is ranked 24th. Yes, I know. I believe it's 6-1 is where they is what their score. It's 6-1 and 3-1 in the Big Ten, but it's like still like mind blowing that you can have like 4 points per game and somehow still have a 6-1 record. I get the Big Ten West is a bit of a dumpster fire this season, but like that is an absurd game. But ESPN predicts this game, or at least the line is predicting this game to be really low scoring, and the over under is saying the same thing. So they have the over under at 30.5, and they have the line at -3. Is Iowa -30.5, and it's gonna be a weird game. So another thing I want to talk about with Iowa is that Cade McNamara got injured, as well as Eric All. So now you have your starting quarterback and your starting tight end out. Cade McNamara only threw for 500 yards this season. Eric All has 299 receiving yards this season so far. Now, I don't know how many of you are very good at math. I was never a great student at math, but that's an easy number to figure out. Half of 500 is 250. So he has 49 more yards than 250. So he has well over half of the receiving yards that Cade McNamara threw. Now, if you put Deacon Hill in there, who has 311 passing yards, he has right around a third. Actually, I think it's no, my bad. It's at 300, so it's a little more than a third. Now they have to rely on Luke Lockley, and there's just nobody else that they have. I mean, Luke Lockley is decent, but he is nowhere near what Eric All has right now, and he's obviously their number one target. Now, they do have a somewhat decent running game. Actually, I shouldn't say running game. I should just say their runners have more yards than anybody else on the team. LaShawn Williams, who's their starter, has 459 yards. Caleb Johnson has 260. And then their third string, Jazian Patterson. Sorry, I butchered that, but I have no idea how to pronounce it. I'm doing my best. Sorry, but has 104. So total, that's almost as many yards as the passing game. Like they're almost 50-50 for passing and for passing and running. I mean, it's a little less than that. It's probably like 45-50, but it's close. But the fact that their starting running back has just 50 less yards than their starting quarterback is nuts to me. So, but both players are going to be out for the rest of the season. And their schedule is at least somewhat realistic for them to win out and go 11-1. Now, if that happens, and this is a big if, because I don't know if they can actually do it because of just how god awful their offense is. But if they win out and go 11-1, what do you do to your coaching staff? Like there's a provision, I think, in when the head coaches, I think it's in Brian Ferentz's contract, where they have to get like 26 points a game. They're not going to do that. I can guarantee that right now. And if they do, I will eat my words. But I would put all of my money on the under that they will get 26 points per game. They're not at 26 points per game right now. They're at 20.9. And that's them with their starters. It's going to be a long road if with this all happening, and I don't know what to make of it. Like all I can think is that, do you fire your head coach and his coaching staff when they led you to 11-1 season, but their offense was the worst in college football, is one of the worst in college football, if not the worst. Now let's go over some of the stats because I think this is pretty glaring. Their offense is 133rd in FBS in yards per game at 231.1. obviously last in the Big Ten because they're last in college football. For rushing yards per game, they're 100th for at 130.9. That's 10th in the Big Ten. At passing yards, they're 131, obviously last in the Big Ten, and they're 100.3. And points per game is, like I said earlier, 20.9 for 115th in college football and 11th in the Big Ten. And all I can say is good luck, Iowa. That's all I can say. And I would love to have Michigan, my favorite team, play them in the Big Ten championship again, because they'll do just what they did last time and just beat all over Iowa. By even more, if I believe, in my opinion, if they play them. So, but you flip the coin over to their defense, and their defense has been winning all of their games. Like, there's no doubt that their defense is in the top echelons of college football, and it has been for a very long time. Let's not forget, Iowa is a defensive powerhouse in college football. They are very good on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know what they're putting up in the water up at Iowa, but they're very good on the defensive side of the ball. They're 34th in the FBS for yards per game. That's 316.7. They're in rushing yards per game. They're 46th. They're 126.1 yards per game. They're 36th in passing yards per game. That's 190.6. And then they're 14.9 points per game. That's 10th in the NFL and 4th in the Big Ten. So to be 10th, or not NFL, sorry, FBS. Got my leagues wrong there for a minute, but forgive me. But 14.9 being 10th in FBS, but being 4th in the Big Ten means that this is a very strong Big Ten East conference, because the Big Ten West is a dumpster fire. So it's gonna be a hard road for Iowa. Can they do it? I don't know. Part of me hopes so, but also part of me is like, I don't know what to make of this, man. I really don't. So, all right. Next up, Air Force is actually ranked for, I think, the first time since 2019. They're currently ranked 22. They're currently ranked 22. And I believe it is the first time since 2019, and they're playing Navy this season. It's gonna be a game. That's all I can say. Is they're playing the midshipmen, and it's gonna be a game. They're somehow they are undefeated, which I still don't know how they're doing it. I don't think they've really played anybody of fantastic caliber. Yeah, their wins are against Robert Morris, Sam Houston, Utah State, San Jose State, San Diego State, and Wyoming. Their best win being against Wyoming in a 34-27 win. But they've done pretty well against pretty much everybody else, with the exception of Sam Houston, which they won 13-3. But back to the Navy Air Force game. The over under is 33.5, and the line is -10 Air Force. So again, Air Force is a running school, so is the Navy. I mean, all of the military schools are running schools. They usually use either some form of the triple option, or there's some form of a high running capacity school. So it's gonna be quite interesting, because Air Force's quarterback only has 450 something yards and 4 touchdowns through the air. So it's gonna be a game. That's all I can say is it's gonna be a game, and I actually think you should watch it, because it, in my opinion, will probably be very funny to watch. Although I do love Air Force. Air Force is great. I just think it's hysterical that they're ranked 22nd. All right. Next up is going to be Michigan State. There was a commentator on that has another podcast, and I don't remember the name of his podcast, but I do remember him. He said that Michigan fans shouldn't even come up to East Lansing because, and he was like, he made innuendos that Michigan State fans were going to basically, just treat Michigan fans like crap, which isn't anything new. But to hear somebody saying that, don't even come because we're going to do this to you, who has a platform much larger than mine, is like, get that crap out of my game. All right. Get that crap out of college football because I don't like it. We all remember what happened last year in the tunnel. A couple of Michigan players, sorry, not fans, players, said a couple of things, and Michigan State players didn't like it and started beating them. I think there was like 8 either suspensions or players kicked off the team. Like there was charges filed against several players. Players were using their helmets, which has been coined the Myles Garrett move. And they pulled a complete Myles Garrett, and now I think several of them did get charged. And I don't know what the outcome of those charges were, but I do know several were charged. But it's like, get that BS, get that crap out of college football. There's no place for it. I hate it. If it was Michigan doing that, if it was Michigan doing that crap, I would say the same exact thing. It is awful to see. You don't want to see it. It is just utter garbage. And if you're a head coach and you can't control your players enough to not have them do that, man, you probably should find another career, because you need to learn. The first thing you need to learn as a head coach is how to control players. Actually, as just a coach in general, is how to get players to do what you want. Because if you can't get them to do what you want, your players are never going to listen to you. And why should they? They don't respect you if they're not doing what you want them to do. So they're just never going to respect you. But, as we know, earlier this season, Mel Tucker was fired. Another coach stepped up to take his place, and Michigan State has just been a dumpster fire. I expect this game to go probably 25 plus points in favor of Michigan. I would say probably closer to 30. It is usually a close game, even in years that Michigan is utterly dominant. But this is a game that this year I don't think Michigan State should really have any chance. Let's look at their offense and their defenses. Their offense, 91 in yards per game. That's 339.8. 110 in rushing yards per game. That's 118.7. 68th in passing yards. That's 221.2. And 108 in 108 in points per game. That's 20 for 22 points per game. It looks bad. It looks really bad. Now their defense looks slightly better, a little better. They're at least a top half defense. They're 41st in yards per game allowed, which is 321.5. They're 33rd in rushing yards allowed per game and 314.8. They're 62nd in passing yards. That's 206.7 and 24.3. That's 61st in college football for points per game. So their defense is a little better, and we'll get to see what Michigan is a little more against a tougher defense. But they lost a lot last year. They kind of got a little gutted on the offensive side of the ball in the draft last year. So now on, one more game that I do want to cover a little bit. I'm not going to talk so much about it because it'll be an interesting game to watch, but I'm not entirely sure what to make of Florida State yet. It's going to be Florida State Duke. This is a top 25 matchup. Duke 16 and Florida State is 4. This is a game that will have significant repercussions on the ACC title race. So it's gonna be an interesting game to see kind of where things go from here. Florida State is currently currently undefeated. They're playing against 5-1 Duke. I don't know if Leonard is going to be back yet. but who knows? He might be. If he is, then this could be a good game for Florida State to kind of test the waters and see how are we against like really good opponents. Because that LSU team has kind of lost most of its luster. Clemson is, as we all know, is just not a phenomenal team this year. It's a really bad year for Dabo. So it's gonna be a pretty interesting game. FSU is currently favored by 14 points. So that's 2 scores. That's gonna be a significant. It's gonna be of significant difficulty for Duke to overcome. And then the over-under is 49. Again, I don't know if Riley Leonard is playing this game. I think it's unlikely that he does, but if he does, then it could be a little closer. It could be closer than that. So the last football game that we're going to cover is going to be the Penn State Ohio State game, the most important game of this weekend. It's a top 10 matchup. It could easily have been a top 5 matchup. Penn State could have sincerely cracked the top 10, but unfortunately voters didn't think they deserved that. So it is a top 10 matchup. OSU is currently favored by minus 4.5. The over-under is 45.5. They are in Columbus, so this is a home game for Ohio State. So that's going to make a significant difference, because if this was in Happy Valley in the whiteout, this would be a completely different game. I mean, this is, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to have that out, but this would be a completely different game if it was in Happy Valley. So, I do want to point a couple of things out, is that this game is going to rely heavily on Kyle McCord and on Drew Aller, both the Ohio State and Penn State quarterbacks respectively. And I also want to point out that Marvin Harrison Jr. has over a third of all the receiving yards for this Ohio State team. It's a significant weakness. I should say he has over a third of the Kyle McCord receiving yards. And I believe he still has a third if you count in the Devin Brown receiving yards, but I digress. He still has a third of the receiving yards. He has a third of the receiving yards for this Ohio State football game. If Penn State can shut Marvin Harrison Jr. down, that significantly limits the options that Ohio State possesses and the routes of attack that Ohio State possesses, because their running game has not been great this season. They've been battered and injured back in that running game. So it's a significant hurdle. This is going to be a really significant hurdle, and could be a future parameter for the outcome of the Big Ten East. It's going to be a significant hurdle for Ohio State. It's also going to be a significant hurdle for Penn State. I mean, Drew Aller has to do a better job of passing and getting the ball out a little more this game, because they're not going to be able to rely entirely on their run attack. So, Drew Aller's 1,200 yards is going to have to go up a little more. So the average 219 passing yards per game is going to have to go higher. I think in this game, they're going to Katron Allen and Nick Singleton are going to have to play their hearts out, and they're going to have to play the best game they've had this season to win against this Ohio State team. So, let's go into some of the stats for this game. So Ohio State, they're first in the Big Ten in yards per game at 433.8. That's 30th in college football. They're ninth in the Big Ten for rushing yards, that at 135. That's 94th in college football. For passing yards, they're 298.8. That's 14th in college football and first in the Big Ten. And points per game, they're 36th. That's 20th in college football and third in the Big Ten. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, they are 251.3 games let up per game, or 251.3 yards let up per game, 7th in college football, 3rd in the Big Ten. At rushing, it's 109.2. That's 23rd in college football, 4th in the Big Ten. Passing, it's 142.2. That's 4th in college football and 3rd in the Big Ten. And in defense, it's 9.7 points per game, 3rd in college football and 3rd in the Big Ten. So that's a lot of stats, and those are gonna be some. If Ohio State can get things going on the ground and prove to be a big threat on the ground as well as in the air, that'll relieve a lot of pressure off of Marvin Harrison Jr. And Marvin Harrison Jr. cannot be the only receiver that Kyle McCord is throwing to. It's going to have to be somebody else. And Penn State's defense is going to have to lock that down. So let's go over Penn State. Now, Penn State is 422.3 yards per game on offense, 37th in college football and 2nd in the Big Ten. 203.3 yards per game. That's 16th in college football for rushing. That's 16th in college football, 1st in the Big Ten. Passing is 219. That's 71st in college football and 6th in the Big Ten, and 44.3 points per game. That's 5th in college football and 1st in the Big Ten. Now, let's go on to the defensive side of the ball, because this is going to be Penn State's most important side of the ball for this game. And and they only let up 166 yards per game. That's 1st in college football, 1st in the Big Ten. But Ohio State has actually played another good team in Notre Dame. Penn State has not played another. I don't even think they've played another ranked team. I could be wrong, but I don't think they've played a ranked team. So that number's gonna be a little skewed to the lower end. Sorry, they have played a ranked team. They've played Iowa, who they handily defeated. But I digress. Iowa is not a very good team this year, like I said earlier. So we shouldn't be relying on these stats entirely, but it does show that they have a good defense. They're 1st in the Big Ten in rushing yards per game on defense at 72.5. That's 3rd in the FBS. Passing yards is 93.5. 1st in the FBS, 1st in the Big Ten. And points per game is 8. That's 2nd in the FBS, 2nd in the Big Ten, behind Michigan, who is at 6.7. So these are all really important stats to understand about both of these teams. And like I said earlier, Drew Aller is going to have to. They're gonna have to let him loose a little more, so that they can actually create things more on the ground, because that's where the huge threat is going to be for them. Is Katron Allen and Nick Singleton are going to be the big threats on that field, even though Drew Aller is a solid quarterback. So I want to move into a little bit of the news from the past couple of weeks for college football. So we'll get to the Michigan stuff in a little bit, but the first thing I want to talk about is actually Washington is attempting to join the Pac-12 lawsuit that Washington State and Oregon State filed against the Pac-12 and the commissioner and the schools leaving, because they're saying, like, these teams are taking away the money that we're getting, and this is not, this is happening to us, and it's happening because of them and things like that. So it is something of a mess. They're trying to join on the side of Oregon State and Washington State so that they can get the lawsuit dismissed, which blows my mind. And the only reason it's Washington joining and not like USC or UCLA or Oregon or something like that is because Washington's in the state in which the lawsuit was filed. So that's why they're trying to join, type of thing. So this would be a wild end to the Pac-12 if Washington did join this lawsuit and did get this dismissed. And I just don't know how this would all work. I'm not a legal expert, but this is quite funny to me. And then I also want to talk about NCAA actually reversed its decision on Tez Walker, who I talked about earlier in the season because they weren't letting him play. They've let him play for the past 2 games. He has been a monster for UNC. He's had like I think he's had like 150 yards in 2 games, which is really, really good. And he scored a touchdown against Miami. So, you know, he's showing his value, and in a time where, you know, the Tar Heels kind of need it right now. So that is also something of a funny headline in in college football. Tanner Mordecai also got injured. He's going to be out for the season. So, you know, that's another bit of news. Tanner Mordecai is the quarterback for, I believe, Wisconsin. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Wisconsin. So he's going to be out for the season. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is obviously the Michigan drama. So Michigan is currently under fire from the NCAA, and they're under investigation because supposedly and allegedly they sent people to watch the games, and from what I've heard, some people have said the practices of other teams, which I don't know why you would watch practices to get signs, but they've done all of this in an effort to steal signs from these other teams. And I tend to view this as the NCAA trying to do whatever it can to say, Harbaugh, you escaped our penalty for this season, so now we're mad at you and we're trying to go after you. They're trying to do it's a witch hunt for the reasons that Harbaugh has spoken out significantly against the NCAA. I don't like that at all. The NCAA is kind of like they're kind of like a school board member trying to use all the power that they have to try and kick out somebody from a school board meeting. That is essentially what they're trying to use the limited authority that they have and the diminishing authority to try and get a coach that they're like, you said bad mean things about us, we're mad now. Like, it's the toddler on the playground that's pushing over the kid because he said that he was a butthead. Like, that's essentially what this is. Like, the NCAA is a toddler. Like, they're acting like a toddler. Like, I'm sort of surprised that we have not caught the commissioner or the president of the NCAA in the middle of a Walmart just on the ground throwing a temper tantrum. It's kind of like that. I'm not surprised. I'm a little surprised we haven't seen that, I should say, actually. Because that's pretty much how he's acting with this investigation. All teams steal signs. Michigan is not the only team to probably do it. Now, this is going to be if they can find enough evidence to even say he did it. Because if they can't find enough evidence, they can't touch him. Because they lose even more than they already have if they try to go after him on like the basis of just somebody's word without any evidence whatsoever. Now, I've heard reports that a coach, an analyst for Michigan is I don't want to say the cause, but he has been suspended as being thought of in connection with this investigation. As the NCAA was asking for his materials specifically, which is causing some people to believe that he was a whistleblower in telling the NCAA that this is happening. If he was, I'm not a fan of that. You got to have loyalty to your program. They've suspended him until the ending until the pending of the investigation, I should say. Now, when I also say you got to have loyalty to your program, if you know your program is doing something so morally egregious, such as hiring prostitutes or, you know, doing other really awful things, such as trying to cover up sexual assaults and other crimes of either students or coaches, then speak out. But if it's something as minor as stealing signs, which stealing a sign maybe works a handful of times a game, much less anything for Michigan to even like for it to really have a big impact on the game. Like, yeah, maybe you get a blitz you can pick up because you saw the sign and you can now tell them that, this is, the play. Maybe you get that a couple of times, a handful of times, 5, maybe 6 times a game. You're not going to get it every play. It's not going to happen. And to think that it's making the difference in these 52-7, 52-10, 45-3 blowouts, give me a break. It's not making any difference. Michigan has been the best football team on every football field they have played since a couple of years ago, actually. They were a better football team than TCU. Since the last time they played Georgia, which was in 2021, that was the last time they were not the best football team on that football field. They should have beat TCU last year. They did not play a great game. Play calling was pretty atrocious at times. So, there's a lot of reasons that they lost that game. They did lose that game, but they were not the worst team on that field. Again, they've been the best team in the Big Ten for the past 2 years, and they're still the best team in the Big Ten, in my opinion. We'll see how it plays out at the end of the season, but they could go for a three-peat of the Big Ten championship. It's not because they're stealing time. It's not because they're stealing signs that they're doing that well. Not in any way. It's because coaching, grit, their secret weapon in their strength and conditioning coach, that's the reason they're winning games. That's the reason. Not because of a couple of signs that they're stealing. And it's ridiculous that the NCAA is going after them. And if by some miracle for the NCAA, they do find evidence that this is happening. They do find evidence that they're stealing signs. If they're going to now punish the players by saying, we're going to take away all the wins you won this season, or like if they will go on and win a national championship, we're going to take away your national championship. Man, you like that would be like such a low blow and such an over the top punishment that I would say like every football team should just like basically tell the FBI off, like, get away from us. So we don't want you anymore. Go create something else because we're going to start our own thing. That would be how ridiculous that is. It would be beyond insane. And the Big Ten would have to look at them and be like, yeah, we're not going to do that. Like, you can try and punish us all you want, but we have a lot of power. We have a lot more power than you. And if we work with like the SEC and the Big 12, you have no power to leverage against us. So, I mean, I could say, okay, maybe a fine for the head coach or a fine for the university. Sure, fine, whatever. But like trying to take away on-field accomplishments would be ridiculous. All right, that's going to be it for this podcast. I thank you guys for watching. You can find this podcast both here on YouTube. You can also find it on Spotify. If you are listening on Spotify, please give this a 5-star review or review it in any way. I do appreciate it. If you're listening on YouTube, please give it a like and a comment down below. Also, if you'd be so kind as to subscribe, it would be much, much appreciated. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I hope you guys have a wonderful game day because it is Saturday morning. And I do hope that you guys really enjoy the rest of the games that are going to be playing today. So, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys have a good day, a good week, and I hope it's been better than my last few days. But I thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.